Hey, welcome back. I'm so happy you're here, and well, I hope you're ready to have some fun because, by golly, we're going to have a lot of fun today. I got my paper turned vertical this time. We haven't done that in a while. And as always, I've got a strong drawing on here. We're painting on a 300-pound paper. As I'm getting started here, all the colors are going to be flashing across the screen so you know what I'm using. Let's go ahead and get things started. And, well, we got our water bucket here. We got 3 wells in this water bucket. They're all filled with water, naturally, but 2 of them I use to clean off my brush. So I rinse it in one, rinse it in the other, then tap it. And then I use the other one to paint with, so I have clean water almost all the time. And ooh, got ourselves a little bit of paint on this flat brush still. My last painting. It's a good thing with watercolor brushes, you can just re-wet things and the paint kind of just comes off the brush. Now once it gets on the paper, that's another matter. But fortunately, while we're doing this, it doesn't matter too much. That said, you want to try to get all the paint off your brush before you have at it. Sometimes it just doesn't happen, though. Sometimes it just doesn't happen. Here, if you ever have any doubts about how much paint is on your brush, you can go ahead and take your roll of toilet paper. That's all I'm using here is a roll of cheap toilet paper you can get at Home Depot, wherever. And it'll tell you pretty quickly if you have any paint on your brush. And it'll help you get it off, too, in case you do have any on there. Alright, let's go ahead now and we're going to work wet and wet again, or we're going to try to at least. Now, the difficulty of putting my paper on the French easel like this, of course, is that, well, things have a tendency to drip when you have such a severe angle. So that makes it a little bit more difficult to paint like this, but I do it just so you can see how things look, because it's important to me that you're able to see. Now, I could do a whole vertical camera and everything, but I don't know, I feel like this helps us get a little bit more intimate, a little bit more up close and personal, than it would be if I just dangled the camera overhead and showed you that way. I don't know, that's just me. That's just me. Anyway, let's go ahead. We're almost ready to start painting this sky here. Now, I've been thinking about what color I want this sky to be while I'm laying down all this water here. And I feel like there's not going to be much granulation in this painting because, well, this lighthouse that we're painting is not going to be a very textural lighthouse. It's not going to be a very textured lighthouse. We're not painting the White House. No, what am I doing? No. Sometimes when you multitask like this, you flub your lines a little bit. Not that I have any, but sometimes I like to pretend I do. That's what we do here. We have fun. We pretend a lot. Ooh, man. There's all kinds of little colors in this water right now. Oh well. A little bit of mildly dirty water never hurt anybody. Heck, people paint with that all the time and have fun with it. Alright, let's go ahead and get our big brush now. And I want to start with a color that's a little bit more yellow. So I'm going to get out our Nicolazo yellow. And things are going to be a little bit more. We're going to start over here and just kind of, just like that. And man, if things are not wet enough up there, we can always give it a little bit more encouragement. Just like this. Help it drop down a little bit. Man, why is it dry so fast? This paper must be really absorbent. I was kind of expecting it to have a little bit more. I was expecting it to be a little bit more wet after all that action with the flat brush, but I guess this thing had other ideas. This painting. All right, we'll help it drip down a little bit. Don't worry. There it goes. Now it's dripping down. Like I say, sometimes it needs a little bit of encouragement. Here, we'll just throw a little bit more up there. A little bit more of this. Ooh, I still have some paint on my brush. Man, we still got all kinds of paint on this brush. No, we're fine on that one. That was just from the flat brush earlier. Okay. Now, just a little Nicolazo yellow up here. That's good. Let that drop down and, mingle, do its thing. And we'll take it to about, I don't know. If you touch your brush all across this surface here, what will happen is that you'll have a bunch of little areas where there are more concentrated color than others, and it'll kind of just blend in. That's the beauty of doing the wet and wet technique, is it kind of just blends in. All right. Now down here along the bottom, we're going to have kind of a two-tone effect though. Let's go ahead and get a little bit of water right. Ooh, let me try to get it right. Ooh, I didn't mean to get yellow on there. Boy, this really is not my day, is it? No. Fortunately, our yellow doesn't stain too much. It doesn't stain too much. Okay. But we are going to get these little nooks and crannies here a little wet. There it goes. There it goes. Alright, yep, I can hear the water dripping right there. Okay, now what we want to do is we want to get into our phthalo blue and our quinacridone magenta. And we're going to mix up a color that's kind of like a middle blue. I don't want it to be too far toward phthalo blue, but I also don't want it to be really far toward magenta, okay? So we'll just, we'll pick a spot right about, right here. Yep. In fact, we can go all along this edge here, because, there it is dripping. It's dripping. Whoop, it's getting into my it's getting into my Nicolazo yellow a little bit on the palette. That's not the best thing ever. That's not my favorite thing. Okay, we gotta be careful here. We don't want to mix up like too much green or anything, which is definitely a danger zone here if we're playing around with Nicolazo yellow and stuff. All right. So we want to kind of just, I don't know, maybe we want to play around in here, and maybe we want to lift a few things. Here, let's get some tissue here so we can do a little bit of our lifting technique. Because you know why I have this tissue? It's to lift stuff. And boy, maybe wetting that wasn't the best plan, because now the tissue's all terry. It's all terry. All right. So we'll go ahead and just lift a little bit of this green here. And if we have to, we'll mix up a little bit more of our middle blue color from the quinacridone magenta and the phthalo blue. And we'll get it real diluted. Okay? Real diluted. Alright? Right in there. And again, we're going to go right along the edges here. Now what I'm looking for is kind of a effect where the clouds are kind of just, or there's a little bit of mist right near the line where these two colors meet. Like over here, they're gonna see. I'm gonna try to get in that nook and cranny right there. There it goes. All right, we got all this going, and that looks pretty cool. We're gonna go right to about the same place, as we got with on the other side. That little line right there, and we'll stop right about there. Okay? Let's see if we can get right up to the line on that. There it goes. There it goes. Now we'll just lift a little bit, because we don't want this to mingle too much and create greens and stuff. Because, you know, if you look at the sky and you start noticing stuff, you notice that there isn't really a lot going on in terms of yellows mingling with blues up there and creating greens and all that. Maybe a little bit, but not a lot. Okay, then we can kind of just dab wherever, create little cloud bits. Okay, and maybe we can go up here too and do the same thing. Wherever. There. That sky can be a little challenging. Maybe we, let's see, how far is that going? That's going about yay high, right? Yeah, it's going about yay high, so let's try to just roughly get in there. Okay. Sometimes we get our measurements a little cockeyed, but try not to do that too much. There it goes. All right. That's better. I feel better about that now. I feel better. Okay. Let's rinse off our brush. And kind of looks like we missed an edge over here, doesn't it? Yeah, a little bit. All right. Whoop. Okay. Let's go ahead with the Nicolazo yellow. Just up in there. Okay. All right. That's good. Maybe we'll go back in with that color. And again, we'll just let it mingle a little bit. And create a little bit of a soft edge, and maybe we'll go back over here and go over there and create another little bit of some interesting value shifts. Part of this technique that we do, there's a few steps to the technique that we do that sometimes I feel like I don't get into enough. One, what we do is we glaze a lot. Okay? That's one thing that we do. Another thing we do is we work wet and wet a lot. Okay? That's another thing we try to do. Sometimes we paint directly with just, dry color, and we don't use a lot of water and stuff. But a lot of the time we do try to go in and, we try to use a lot of glazing, and we use a lot of wet and wet. And we pay attention to pigment texture, and we also have a mixing system that we use. And it's an interesting one. It's an interesting one that you might not be aware of when you do it. Now, because this painting is not going to have a lot of texture to it, we're not going to see a lot of our ultramarine blue color that we usually use. And we have all kinds of colors that we throw in here, and they all like to show up to the ball because we're throwing a big party. But this party is not for ultramarine blue. No, this party is for the other colors. Pretty much every other color that we have today. That's a fun color. Or that's a fun sound, right? Now let's pay attention here. What color do we need next? Well, we kind of need to probably get in there, and we need to focus on that glass. So here's what I'm going to do. You know what? I'm going to take my wash brush. I like to think of the flat brush as a nice wash brush. It always helps me get in these tight little corners when I use it. I like to use it to lay down the initial layer of water whenever I get in here and do this stuff. Just feel like it works so much better. We're going to get some more of that quinacridone magenta and phthalo blue, and this is going to be a little bit more violet. Let's add just a touch more of the quinacridone magenta on this. Yeah, that's going to be a nice color. We're mixing in that middle blue color, that violet blue color that we get from ultramarine here. And what we do is we just kind of, since there's darkness at the bottom, we'll touch the bottom. All right. There. There it goes. And what we can do is we can kind of just paint at the top too. All right. And let's make sure that we save that edge there by lifting a little bit. All right. And we'll make sure that we add a little bit more color at the very bottom so that it's emphasized where the light is, or where the light should be. And what we can do if we want to lift a little bit more color, we don't necessarily have to use the tissue paper to do that. We can go ahead with our brush, a dry brush, and just take a little bit off the top there. And that could help us. That can help us control a little bit more. Because oftentimes when you use the tissue paper like this, you lose control of everything, which is, not the best thing in the world. All right, let's go ahead and think about what we need up here. What do we need? What do we need? Ooh, I think what we need is probably a little bit of phthalo blue with that Nicolazo yellow. Maybe. No, I don't like that. Here, let's add a little bit more phthalo blue to our mix of quinacridone magenta and phthalo blue. Okay, that's nice. That's very nice. Here, that looks like it's already, the color's already escaping back in there, doesn't it? There it goes. Sometimes you gotta use a little bit of encouragement. Hopefully the paint doesn't bead too much. I feel like that water is beading a little too much. Alright, there. If it beads too much, you can just touch it. Just touch it. Okay? To remove some of the water in there. Perfect. Alright, now let's pay attention. Let's pay attention to the glass up here on this top of the lighthouse here. Alright, so we're going to have a bunch of different tones. It looks like we're going to have a bunch of different tones, and we want them to be pretty light. So let's add a lot of water to our mix of phthalo blue and quinacridone magenta. So we'll have something very light, very light. Alright, now the lightest one is going to be right here. Right here, this lightest pane of glass. Alright? That'll be right there. There. Okay. Now just the lightest touch. The lightest touch. Okay. Paint all that. Leave that a little bit down at the bottom there. Alright. And we'll go up here. And we'll very carefully paint this area here. Now, if we need to get in some narrower areas, we do have a liner brush that we could use. Okay? Here, let me touch that again. Okay. Just to give that a little bit more encouragement there. That's nice. That's nice. Okay. Now, I think I will get out my liner brush for this next one. So let's go ahead and just set our round right here. Okay? And we'll still get out the flat brush though, because we want to lay in some of the water on this next side. Alright, so let's play around with this. Right about here. Right in there. There's going to be a little bit of that same color. And that's a little too much water in there. That's a little too much. Again, if there's too much, just take your tissue, your toilet paper, that cheap toilet paper you buy at Home Depot, or wherever you have toilet paper that's really cheap. Maybe you get it at the dollar store. It doesn't matter. But you get that, and you set that down. If it's too much water, then you just pick it back up with that cheap toilet paper. Makes it real easy. Don't spend a bunch of money on all that expensive stuff. You don't need that. Cheap stuff is just fine for this type of work. In fact, a lot of times it's better because it doesn't have any texture on it. This is real flat toilet paper. This is the best type of stuff to use, honestly. A lot of people like to think maybe if they get the fanciest stuff, they'll have the best results, and that's not always the case. Because what happens then is you got all that toilet paper with all that quilted look to it, and sometimes when you pick color up, you know, the quilted look gets left behind. And then your painting looks a little silly there because you got a whole quilt on your lighthouse. It might look neat depending on the circumstance, but I don't know that I'd recommend it. Okay. Let's go ahead and let's maybe lift a little bit of this because I want this to be very light. There. And I want this to be light too. And we don't have to worry too much about lifting phthalo blue like that because phthalo blue doesn't lift hardly at all. So just lifting a little bit of paint will leave that nice little value behind with the mix that we made. Okay, now let's go in this last one here. This one's going to be a little darker. This one's going to be a little darker, I think. So let's go ahead and paint this. Well, what else were we going to do, right? Of course we were going to paint it. Okay. We got this little edge right here, right in there. That real sneaky edge. Ooh, that's a doozy, huh? Yeah. Sometimes these edges get real precarious. You wonder, boy, am I going to be able to do this? This one's a real humdinger. Well, just have a little faith and you'll be able to handle it. So, what we want to do here, I think, is we want to take this color and add the lightest touch of our nickel azo yellow to it. Okay? We use our nickel azo yellow and our quinacridone magenta mix. And we want to add just a little bit more of the quinacridone magenta on this one because the mix is going to turn out to be pretty greenish in the end otherwise. But we want this to lean a little bit more toward a middle blue that's been darkened down ever so delicately. Okay? Alright. And we'll get a little bit more of the phthalo blue then because you know me. And then a little bit more of the quinacridone magenta. Alright. Alright, so let's go in here now. And let's just... And this, after we add the nickel azo yellow, this should have a little bit of a darker hue to it. If it seems too intense, that's alright. Don't worry too much yet. I'll tell you when you should worry. I'll let you know when it's time to worry. You don't worry yet. You just enjoy yourself. Maybe you're kicking your feet up right now. Maybe you're just enjoying a drink. Or maybe you're following along. I don't know. Maybe you're just trying to relax. Who knows what's going on with your life? Whatever you're doing, it's alright. But we have no reason to worry right now. Everything's fine. This is just a different valued color. It's a darker valued color with more muted hue. There's a difference between hue and value. I guess I should add here. Like, hold on, let me get this right here. Okay, got that. Now, let's lift that a little bit. Lift that a little bit. Okay. Now that we paid attention, and we got that window there, that looks a little better, doesn't it? And we can actually go over this other color that we made right here and capture a little bit of something that we missed, because maybe we got a window here that's a little bit two-toned. Maybe it's catching a reflection. That's what these windows tend to do, right? Yeah, they sure do. It kind of just sneaks up in there too. Alright, good deal. And we'll just take a little bit. Well, let's not take off a little bit quite yet. Let's sneak it down here near that edge. Alright? Okay, now we got it. Okay. Very good. Now look at that. That is very nice. That is so nice. Okay, so now what we got to do is we got to start thinking about what color we want to make this lighthouse. Because it's pretty much going to be all one big color at this point. And I'm thinking it's going to have a yellowish orange glaze. Alright? Alright, well, we're going to have to clean off the palette a little bit to make this going to work. So, I don't want to leave my brush in there. I better take that bad boy out. Here, let's go ahead and clean off some of this stuff. Some of this stuff we don't really need. Like, we don't really need all this granulating color right now. So we can just wipe that off and forget about it. Who knows, we might regret that later because that color, those colors tend to be useful sometimes. Okay. Okay. We got it. Every so often you gotta clear off the palette and, make some new colors. It's alright. Perfectly normal. It happens. It does. Alright. Okay. Here we go. Alright, let's take some of this nickel azo yellow, the pyrrole orange. Okay? And I'm gonna get a little bit, it's gonna be about even the amount of color that we get in this. Alright? And let's get some water on this because we want a big old puddle of it. A big old puddle. A big old puddle. Yeah, when we dilute this, it's going to be real interesting to look at. Okay. Alright. It's really important that you mix your color first before you lay down the water with the flat brush. Sometimes I don't do that, or sometimes I forget to mix one of the colors before we do it, but this is one of those cases where you should do as I say and not as I do. There's a few of those. I'm sure you've noticed. Alright. Let's go ahead now. And let's test our bravery. In fact, we might want to create a little bit more color here. You know what I say, you should always create a little bit more color than you think you need. It's always a good color, always a good idea to make more color like that. Just a big old puddle of it, big old puddle. Always mix more than you think you need. Because it's a lot easier to take some off if you have too much than it is if you don't have enough and you got to mix some more. All right. There we go. Yep. Always mix more than you think you need. That should be my life motto. I had a professor when I was in college who would tell us you should paint like a millionaire. And when he said that, I was wondering what he was talking about. I thought he was kind of crazy. Not really. I thought he was a good guy. I liked him a lot. He really got me into painting. I was more of a drawing guy before I met him. And after I met him, well, that was about it for me. I was a painting guy the rest of my life. I know, right? Big story right there. But anyway, he would tell us to paint like a millionaire, and I was wondering what he was talking about. But what he meant was you should try to paint like as if money is no object to the colors that you're using. Because if you're constantly thinking about how much money your art is going to cost, or you're real stingy on the color that you're using, you're going to hamper yourself by mixing up all these minuscule amounts of paint. And maybe cost is a consideration when you're painting. I'm not going to deny that. But you don't want to be mixing like little mousy amounts of paint and all that. You want to mix more than you think you need, because oftentimes, you're going to be surprised how much of that you're going to use. Because paintings will surprise you like that. So I started taking his advice and I started, painting like a millionaire. And my paintings kind of exploded overnight. Yeah, they kind of went kaboom because they were so bad. No. You always start off doing some pretty lousy paintings. You got to create a lot of lousy art before you get to the good stuff. That's just a fact of life. Might as well get over it right here, right now, and tell yourself, well, I want to paint. Well, if you want to paint, or you want to draw, or whatever kind of art you want to do, you might as well accept right now that you're going to make some garbo, some real bad stuff. And even when you're good, you're going to make some bad stuff. I mean, not everything I paint is a winner. Sometimes I paint things and I think to myself, I could have done that better. There could probably a better way I could have done that one. Yeah, I know that feel. It's a feel that always sticks with you. You might notice that I'm repainting a few things here and there. It's because this paper gets very absorbent, and oftentimes the paper will dry before I'm done doing the washes like this or laying down the water. It's one of those trials and tribulations of working with 300-pound paper. I like using the flat brush to do this because I can get all kinds of little areas like this. It's real easy to do it too. Because the flat brush, it can bend if I need it to. If I twist it, it can form all kinds of different little shapes. It's a very versatile brush, and surprisingly so. You would be honestly surprised how versatile this brush is. So I recommend you give it a shot if you haven't tried a flat brush yet. It's a very good idea. Okay. Yeah, that's probably about good. Let's go ahead and get on with this wash here. Now, like I say, use a lot of water on this, okay? And look. Yeah, that's about the right color right there. That's about the right color. And I'm stressing enough, I hope I'm stressing enough, that you need to use a lot of water. You need to use a lot of water. Now we're just going to lay in this flat wash here. We're just going to get this whole thing as one color. That's really the object. Because, well, let's see here. Where is it? There it is. Okay. There. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. But what's going on here is that we have this shape here. Oops, I'm getting a little bit too much going on there. Should be careful there. That could have been disastrous, but so far it's not too bad. All right. So we're kind of scrubbing things in right now, aren't we? Yeah, a little bit. And what this is this kind of a sunset type of scene where, we're looking at this and we're seeing the lighthouse, which is normally a red color, is capturing all kinds of these neat little hues that we rarely see. This is one of those times where I really recommend that you have a strong drawing. You don't have to create a strong drawing to do nice paintings and stuff, but when you first start out and everything, it's a lot easier. It's so much easier when you have a strong drawing to work with. I mean, could you imagine me painting this without a drawing? Yeah, that would be agony. Clearly, we would not get done in 2 hours like we usually do. This would be a 5-hour show instead of a 2-hour one. I don't know, is that still fast? Not really. I don't think anyone wants to watch a 5-hour show. Or maybe they do. I have no idea. I think the point is I don't really feel like making a 5-hour show. Because eventually my back's going to hurt and I'm going to have to go eat dinner. Alright. So, that's one of our trials and tribulations that we just finished right there. Let's make sure that we clean up a little bit of the edges of this. We might want to go back in there and play around with this a little bit. That I'm not sure about that one. Okay, these over here, we should go ahead and fix those railings. Okay, there we go. And this right here, we want to take out some of the color on that. Okay. Now let's look around, see what areas there are that we might need to play around with. Okay, well, maybe there's this one. Maybe that color doesn't really, that little splash doesn't really need to be there. No, probably not. Okay. And there. Well, because a little bit of color got into that window, it's not the end of the world. Because it helps dull the color down a little bit, so it kind of works. All right. Now we want to keep this light. Keep it light. All right. That's one of my mantras right now is keep it light. All right. Okay. Keep it light. Okay. There. There it goes. You really have to be careful with the pyro orange because it's a very staining color. But when it's assisted by Nicolazo yellow, it gets tamed down a little bit, so it's a little easier to play around with after it's wet and everything. Alright. We got ourselves a pretty even wash there, I think, which is exactly what I wanted. It's exactly what I wanted. Okay. Let's get this. There. Now. Let's rinse off our brush. Okay. That's good. Ooh. Looks like we got a little bit of extra over here. Alright. Yeah, I didn't mean for that to happen. Looks like some of this color over here was still a little wet. That happens. If it does, let's just paint over it again. Okay. And let me move that little peg so I can get to that a little bit more easily. There it goes. Okay. Overall, that's pretty even. I'm not crying too much. That's all pretty damp. This is all pretty damp. Oh, this might be a little lighter or a little drier. So let's go ahead now. And I think, with a little bit of that leftover phthalo and quinacridone color, let's just fill in this blank right here because I think I missed a spot. I'd feel better if we got it. There. There. Come on. Really? I thought it'd be a little darker than that. Okay. That about matches the tone. Matches the value. So that's about right. Now let's go ahead and create a color here because we need something that's a little... we need something that's a little duller. Okay. We need to create, with our phthalo blue and our quinacridone magenta, another one of those middle blue colors. And we'll go into our quinacridone magenta and the nickel azo yellow. And we're looking for something that's a little dark blue. Remember that there's a little bit of a mixing angle when you add nickel azo yellow or any yellow to a mix that has, a violet in it, like one that's made with phthalo blue and quinacridone magenta. And what happens is that mixing angle causes it to shift sharply toward green. It's one of those strange things that happens because there's so much green in pretty much every yellow. So, it just happens. All right, we got a nice color here. Let's go ahead and work with this one. I'm gonna, you know what I'm gonna do. Let's cross our fingers here and hope that this is a little dry up here too. Okay. Yep, it's good. So let's go ahead, throw some water down on this. Okay. We got that. We got that. Okay. So let's go in here. And we'll, oops. I wanna try to maintain those safety rails. So let's go ahead with our liner brush because this is delicate work right now, isn't it? Yeah, let's be a little bit more responsible here. All right. There it goes. All right, I got a feeling like this is going to drip if I don't do something pretty soon. I don't want that. Here. Okay. There. Maybe we should go in here dry. Maybe this is not really some wet and wet type stuff that we should be doing right here, right now. Yeah, sometimes you want to do it, but it just doesn't work out. Alright? Yeah, if it doesn't work out, don't let it worry you. We'll work with what we got. You gotta be flexible. I think it's one of the big things about painting. You gotta be flexible, so don't let it worry you too much if things don't go according to plan like that one didn't. Okay. So let's just... Yeah, this is going a little better now. It really feels like this is starting to take shape now, doesn't it? Yeah, this is starting to look real handsome. I'm feeling pretty good about this one. There it goes. And we'll get in here. Get that last one right there. Try to maintain the shape of those, of that safety rail. Try to maintain the shape of it. Yeah, keyword try, right? If you need a new piece of tissue paper, go ahead and get it. Alright. Now let's Get some of this and some of that. Okay. All right. Good deal. This is still a little damp. Still a little damp. Okay. Well, what about here? What about there? Well, that's not too damp. So why don't we go ahead with our liner brush and just color this in a little bit. Let's maybe add a little bit more of that quinacridone magenta to kind of match the color we got in here. All right. I think that would be a capital idea. We missed a spot at the beginning of the painting, didn't we? Yeah, sometimes you miss a spot. But like I say, don't let it worry you. Don't let it worry you at all. Alright, look at that. See, we're getting it. We're getting it. We're in a great place. And these rags are getting a little dirty here, so we can go ahead and tear off a new piece, and we can maybe lift this a little bit down here. And then it'll about match the same hue as that right now. There, now we got ourselves a nice middle blue, a non-granulating one. Now when I talk about granulation versus non-granulation, that means that what happens with granulation is that the pigment particles settle into the paper and it creates like this dotted effect. It looks very granular. It's kind of what it sounds like. Whereas when you use a color that it doesn't granulate, then it has a kind of a flatter appearance, kind of like metal, and you'd use granulation for stuff that needs more texture in it. Okay, let's go in here now, and let's create our next color, which I think is going to be a little bit more intense of an orange. At least that's my gut feeling here, because on some of these edges we want to leave a little bit more of that orange color. All right, let's go in here and let's just get that orange in there. Okay. And for the rail right here, we're kind of going to just well, let's do this here. I'm not a big fan of this color from the other side. All right. Okay, there's that one. And then we'll get that. This is that same orange that we were using. And remember, we used the liner brush to capture fine details like this. Fine details that would be an absolute pain. Big old pain in the butt if we didn't capture it this way. Okay. We got a bit of a bingo card going on here where there's a certain number of things that happen every episode, and I got a feeling a few of them are going to happen. I already got painted myself, so that's one for the bingo card. You didn't see it, but while I was cleaning my palette near the beginning, I got a little bit of paint on myself, which was fun as always. Quote unquote fun. Okay, let's paint this side just like that. And the underside of these. Okay. And then right in here. Okay, just like that. All right. When you get near the edge of these things, when you get near the edge, be a little careful. Okay? Because some of these, when it meets the bars, there's not going to be as much of a shadow underneath there, alright? Now, when we're crossing these vertical ones, it's alright. because, you know, there's going to be a little bit of shadow side under there because the bar is going inside of the bar that's going horizontal. The vertical bar is going inside of the bar that is horizontal. Okay? There it goes. This is very delicate work. You know, it's funny, is sometimes people ask me, how do you do that? And the answer is always very carefully. And it's kind of a, I think they get a little mad at me when I say that because it's kind of a flippant response, but I don't mean for it to be that way. It's just the God's honest truth. There's no secrets here. The honest answer is just, well, really, really carefully. That's how I do it. Okay. Okay. Now, I think we can get out a bigger brush for some of this other stuff over here. Okay. Like, make sure I got this cleaned off, because I don't want to go in here and be doing a bunch of stuff without it clean. Alright. Alright, so let's go here. Let's make this work. Okay. Actually, let's take a little bit off that edge there, because I feel like I got too much paint near the edge. So yeah, I try to do it right and I already screw it up. That's just like me. That'll be a 1 for the bingo card right there. Screwed up the painting. Oops. You know, there's that list of things that has to happen every episode. Screwing up the painting a little bit? Well, that's on there. For sure that's on there. Goodness gracious me. Alright. Now we'll try to leave this edge right here. Okay. Alright. Okay. There she goes. Whew. Whew. There it is. Hooting like an owl. It was bound to happen. Okay. Let's go in here and get this. Alright. And we'll go down in here and get the insides of this sport beam right here. That one's good. That one's good. Alright. What do you say we just hit this one right here? Yeah, I feel like that's a good place to hit it. Alright. And this one right here, we'll just hit that whole thing. And in fact, we'll go over all this business. Okay. It really helps to break your painting up into chunks so you don't get too overwhelmed. Because a lot of times when you paint, you know, you get overwhelmed by all the stuff that you see. Not everything has to be wet and wet, and not everything has to be painted all at once. Sometimes you want to concentrate on smaller areas so you don't go too crazy trying to paint them. And you know, it's a good policy, no doubt. Alright. We'll just... There it goes right there. Now after we lay down this layer, I feel like things are going to be getting a little more orange right after this. Maybe a little bit more orange. Okay. Let's take some of this, go right in here. Okay. Alright. do these other railings. 'Cause why not? Make sure that we get all the railings done. Okay. There. Oh, that actually looks really nice. There, let's get... There's a nice little detail here where this post is kind of up against this door here, so they kind of get a little obscured. Sometimes that happens. Sometimes when you go out and look for stuff out in the world for references and, you know, subject matter, it isn't all picture perfect. Sometimes it's a little messy. It's honestly all right, because a lot of the most interesting stuff is a little bit more difficult to deal with. If you can find a way to problem solve, it makes for a really fascinating picture. That's why we do so much problem solving on this show. We spend so much time trying to figure things out, you know? Okay, this should maybe get a little bit something right here. And then okay. Now we don't want too much of the dry brush technique because well, this is supposed to be metal, right? And I don't know that the technique is going to work so well on metal. Okay. All right. No pressure. Goodness me. You know, we could probably get away with throwing a little bit more of this wash on here with the little round at this point. Here, let's go ahead here and just, we're going to save this edge right here. But the rest of this, we're screwing this up already. Yeah, that's what I get when I'm too overzealous. Alright, we're going to save these edges. Okay. Save those edges. It's really important. Get it? Get it. There. Okay. Yeah, sometimes you paint outside the lines a little bit, but whatever. Whatever. As long as you get the general vibe down, you're good. Okay. Go down in here. This staircase is probably the most difficult thing about this painting, if I'm being totally honest. Okay. Yeah, funny that the most difficult thing about this painting is actually the staircase, because it got so many little details on it. Well, it gets a little bit more manageable, like I say, if we break it up in chunks. We just take it bit by piece, deconstruct it, because you know I have the little highlight on the step and I got the shadow on the step. Okay, first we get that whole thing glazed. We glaze in smaller and smaller parts is how we do this, is how we make this manageable. You don't have to paint the whole painting all at once, and you really shouldn't. One of the joys of watercolor is to be able to paint this in layers. It's so much easier to glaze with watercolors than it is with any other medium. Okay, now look at this. Look at this. Look how much we've gotten done here. It feels amazing, doesn't it? Yeah, it does. Now let's go ahead and get the rest of this. Now this side of this, we're going to leave that intact. Okay? We're going to leave that intact. We're not gonna color it. We're not gonna color it. All right. And then pretty much all the stuff that we colored while we were working on this here, we're not gonna do anything with. Okay. Now, if you see anything that looks a little wet, try to avoid it. Because if you try to paint it while it's still wet, that color is going to come back to haunt you. It's already happened to us a few times, this picture. Here. Okay. There it goes. Now, I recommend being a little bit more careful when you use color like that. Here, let's get our big old round here and create more of this yellow-orange color. Alright? We still want a lot of that Nicolazo yellow in the mix. Alright? Okay. There it goes. Okay. There we go. Let's not worry too much until we get to the very edge of things. Okay? Okay. When we get to the edge of a lot of what we do, we'll need to pay special attention that we don't touch an area that we already got some color on. We also want to be able to lift a little bit of this while it's still wet. Okay? Alright, let's go in here. And avoiding these rails. And avoiding these steps. Whoops. I said avoid the steps, not get the steps. Okay. But luckily we didn't have to worry about that too much. I said avoid the rails. This is why we need our little liner brush right now, you know? Because this is getting a little hairy. Alright. Here we go. Yeah, we'll just go in here. That same color. Now if this were an oil painting, we would just be painting these rails right over top of what we've already painted here. But since this is watercolor painting, we have to be very careful about the manner in which we paint these things because we don't have that luxury. We do not. So, this is our cross to bear right now. It's just one of those trials and tribulations of watercolor. Okay, get out a piece of tissue paper and let's take a little bit off. Okay. All right. Now a lot of this we might be able to leave alone. because a lot of this looks pretty decent. Although we might glaze a little layer of pyrrole over this just to shift it toward pink a little bit more. But right now it looks pretty good. It looks really good, actually. I can't complain too much. Alright. It's still very, very wet over this whole thing. Alright. A little drier at the bottom. So we might concentrate our efforts down there a little bit. In fact, let's take a little bit of pyrrole. Let's take a little bit of pyrrole with our smaller round. Okay? And where do I want to put it on the palette? Where do I want to put it? You know what? I'm going to clean off a nice little spot right here. Oh boy, the calm before the storm. I hope you guys are ready. If you're watching out there, I know you're ready. You've been waiting for this whole time, haven't you? Yeah. You know what's going to happen. I bet you know. You know everything. You think you know. I'm antagonizing you, aren't I? Maybe a little bit. I can't help it. I like to have a little fun. Alright. Let's just clear off some of this color. We don't need this color right here. Any color that has ultramarine in it can really just be wiped off. Okay. We're good now. Now, let's get lots of water here. Lots of water. Big ol' puddle. You know, one of these days I should just get a cup and like throw it in there that way. Okay. Alright. Now you gotta be careful with the pyrrole. Pyrrole orange is very strong. It's very strong, but boy, does it shine when you glaze it. All right, let's go ahead now. Here's a little bit of a bravery test right here. Let's go across this whole thing right here, right there. And we'll just give a little bit of a tap right here. That doesn't need much. Just needs a little bit of that orange, a very light tint of it, to shift it toward orange like that. We want it to be a little redder. A little redder. Isn't that fascinating the way that works? Here, we can actually start going over this too. Yeah, all right. Let's go over here too. Okay. The rest of that I think we can leave alone. Okay. Maybe in here. Yep. You can get a little bit more pyrrole in there. Oh, that pyrrole orange. It really does wonderful things, doesn't it? I don't know how many people use this color, but I think it's just terrific. It's one of the most useful colors you can possibly have. I really do recommend it. I know it's an orange, but when you make a tint of it, it brightens to this nice salmon pink. And it just, boy, it just glazes like nothing else. It's like a healthy flesh tone or a floral pink or something. It's got a really, really pink undertone. It's just fascinating to look at. And I enjoy complex colors like that. Colors that, you really don't see coming, to be honest. You really don't see colors like that coming. Okay. Now let's go ahead here and we'll wait for that to dry. We'll wait for the rest of this stuff to dry too. The stairs, though, we can go ahead and do some work on those. Luckily, we already have some guidelines, so we don't have to worry too much about where we get this color. very careful about applying, the glazes like this, because one of the things about glazes is that the more of them you add, the darker the value is going to get. So when I add them like this, it's not just because I'm doing corrective glazes. Because I look at the painting, I realize, well, this painting would probably look a lot better if it had this kind of color to it. So I glaze the color over that. But I also maintain the highlights on this so that things can be more easily seen. Okay. All right. Very good, very good. Oops, I got myself a little bit of tissue on my finger there. This is really transforming the painting a little bit already. Now that color that we were using wasn't bad. I just feel like I want it to be a little bit more red. A little bit more red. Ooh, looks like we missed a spot right there. Huh? Oh, it's a good thing we still got some of that color left over. Here, we'll just go over this here. Right here, just like that, and we'll go up here. Okay, that's a little better now. Okay, let's go in here with this yellow orange color, and we'll just get this. Yeah, we'll get that. Sorry to leave you behind like that. I didn't mean to do that. I meant to get you just like I got all the others. I just got a little sidetracked. Well, you know what I say. It happens. So don't beat yourself up. Don't beat yourself up too much. Okay. Now look at that. He's already on his way. That's cool. That's mighty cool. All right. So now I have to decide if I want to change this color up here like I changed this one down below, or whether I want to keep it the same color. Well, let's go ahead and just work on the top of this lighthouse first before we make some big decisions about the color of the rest of the lighthouse. All right, let's take some of this dark color here. This dark color. Let's there. Okay. That's not bad. Just a little bit of detail here. A little bit of detail right there. Okay. Okay, we're just painting details up there. It's nothing too exciting. Nothing too exciting. Although we gotta do it because it really helps a painting stand out when you have these kinds of details on it. Okay. Looking good. Looking good. Do we want to add anything else here? I don't know. Maybe we could add just a little something right here. All right. Okay. Just a little of something right up there. That's cool. Okay. Well, with this, I'm going to say that we should glaze the rest of this, but leave this side alone. Okay, I think that might have been the right color for the... It might have been the right color for this highlight here, but for that middle tone, I think a little bit more pyrrole orange would have been in order. Well, like I say, you live and learn. Now let's not fool around too much here. Let's wet this again, and then we'll add the pyrrole. Oops, I didn't mean to get that. Oh well. Yeah, you work quickly. You're bound to make mistakes. You can only work so fast before you start making all kinds of little mistakes here and there. It's a little frustrating, but you try not to let it get to you. Okay. All right. Oops. All right. Man, that water really wants to drip right there, doesn't it? It sure does. It sure does. Now these colors are staining, which is why glazing is so much easier with them. What I mean when I say staining is that they don't come up. And I've probably referred to this before. But staining colors, when you put them down, they stay down. You can lift them a little bit with the paper that we use, the tissue paper, while they're still wet. If they're still wet, it's doable, although difficult to manage because they don't lift super well. But if they're completely dry, yeah, they're not coming up. If you completely bungled the painting, then you should probably just try again at that point. Okay. Let's get some pyrrole in here. Okay, we got a lot of pyrrole. I mean, you got a lot of water. And we'll get one more round of water. Okay. This is all we're doing. We're just adding a little bit of a tint of pyrrole to our lighthouse here. That's really all we're doing. Okay. If you got too much water, that wasn't enough water, was what that was. Okay. Be sure you get enough water. You don't want to have super strong color here, because pyrrole is very strong. It's also very, very staining. It really does not come up all that well. It's one of those colors that once it's down, tends to stay down. Almost dripped there, but we caught it. Okay. All right. Okay. should be pretty good, I think. That should be good. Alright. Okay. Now we can concentrate a little bit more on creating our dark colors. Oh, that's dripping down some more. Yeah, that's dripping down a little too much. Let's get our liner brush here. So I want to go into the Pyro Orange and do a little bit of glazing up here over these rails. Come on. Give me a little bit more. Okay. Okay. There I go. Give myself a little pat on the back is what I'm doing right there, right now. Because I deserve it. There. Okay. Good God. How much this color is there that it just decides it wants to drip down? We got too much water here. There. Water keeps just dripping down and down and down. Ah, it's too much. There. Finally. Finally. Please. Dry for my sake. Thank you. Okay. Let's go ahead and think about our darks at this point. Now, our big dark color, I'm pretty sure is going to be Pyro Orange with Yellow Blue. You know, we use a lot of that color. And today's going to be no exception, really. Nope, not at all. Alright, let's go down here. Let's go down here. Down into the depths of this piece. And, oh boy, we got some water in here, don't we? Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, we got some water in there. How about over here? Okay. Well, that's dry-ish. Alright, I'll go into probably this section right here. Okay? So let's add a little bit of water to this section here. Let's go ahead and do that. And then here's where we get our bravery test at this point. Alright. There. There it goes. We can lift a little bit of this right here. Okay. Okay, we got that. And we're going to keep that color. Okay. How about the rest of this? Most of this is still wet. Okay. How about this over here? Well, we'll just go ahead and paint over it. Okay, here we go. See what I mean? When it's still wet, we can do all kinds of lifting and stuff. I feel like for these darks, we might want to think about making this a little bit more of a dry color. And we should consider making this more dry. Yeah, that might be a good idea for this. Okay. Here, let's take the liner brush. First, let's lift some of this. There it goes. Okay, let's go up here. Add those dark colors. Okay, just like that. This is just Pyrrole and Phthalo Blue. And when you mix them together, you get kind of a brown color. It leans a little bit toward violet. But it's a very interesting color to work with, because, you know, it's not a color you think of too much when you think of dark colors. Quite unusual, but it really does work very well. Just look at the value we're getting from this. There it is. There it is. It's really easy to make this color too. You know, because it's just two colors. You notice that a lot of times when we mix our colors on here, we're only using two colors. And there's a reason for that. It's because it's a lot easier to mix just two colors, you know, than playing around with a triad and stuff. So what a triad is, it's when you have three colors that you're mixing together all the time, whereas you're just mixing together two colors, like I do a lot of the time, and then glazing them. Well, it's a lot easier then, because we just mix and then we glaze over dry stuff, and then we mix a new color and glaze over that dry stuff, and, you know, we keep going and going until we got a finished painting. And here's what we're doing right here. Here's what we're doing. Now again, you want to be very careful going down. Don't destroy that little edge, okay? Don't destroy it. Okay. Okay. Whew. That was a tough one, wasn't it? Yeah, a little bit. A little bit, but we got it. We got it. I'm feeling pretty good about that. Top of this, let's get this little edge right here. Little edge right there. Okay. Very nice. There it goes. Alright. Maybe over here. Yeah, over here we'll go ahead and we'll just use this dark color that we have. And we'll get all this stuff. There. Okay. We'll do the same thing over here. And what I'm doing is I'm kind of just bracing my elbow on the table. You know, it helps steady things a little bit. I'm choking up on the brush a little bit. When I say choke up on the brush a little bit, it means that I'm holding it really close to the ferrule. Right? Yeah, I'd say I am. I'm getting it a little too close, I think. Here, let's do this. There. Of course, naturally, the underside of this lighthouse is going to be very dark because there's no sunlight hitting it. So, just about everything we see is going to be a reflected color. Okay. So we've got some interesting things happening here. What we're going to do is we're going to draw down like this, okay? And we're going to draw across like this. All right. And the reason we did this is because there's another layer that we're going to apply pretty soon. Here. Let's get that. Yeah, we got it. Okay. All right, we got this one too. Now look how smart that is. Yeah, that's nice. Leave that railing alone. Okay. Very nice. No stress at all, right? Right. No, we're fine. We're doing fine. In fact, we're probably most of the way along on this. This is one of those paintings that is deceptively simple. Or I say deceptively difficult. One of the two. It's pretty simple in its composition, but as far as painting it, ooh, it's got some tricky parts to it, doesn't it? Yeah, I'll say. It's got some stuff that you gotta weigh your finger down on the paper to really get it. What we might do is outline a few things here. Like that, and we'll just graze that. Yeah, we'll graze that a little bit. Okay, we got enough color here that we can make this work. I think we have just enough color to capture the entire underside of this. Alright. Here, we might need a little bit more of the pyrrole on this one. There it is. All right. There we go. And okay. Now look at that. Wow. That's some look to it, huh? Man. All right. Let's go ahead and mix a little bit more of that color up. Again, this is mostly pyrrole with the phthalo blue. Okay, let's take a little bit of that and let's really outline this. Okay. Okay. Let's get the bottom one. All right. Let's go over here. Here, let's get the underside of these. There. Okay. capture the outline. I know we already captured it a little bit, but I want to capture it a little more. Okay. Just like this. Okay. And down we go. Down we go. Okay. There we go. Okay. Excitement abounds. Oh goodness. Oh goodness. Now, here's what we'll do. Here's what we'll do. We'll take some of this color and just throw it down here. There it goes. That's probably about enough for that. That's about enough, I think. And we'll get this over in here. Okay. And maybe we'll, well, you know what we need? We need to get a liner out for this one. For this little detail. Yeah. A lot of these little details here. Just beg for the liner. Okay, right here. Okay. Just like that. As I say, no pressure. There it goes. Okay. And then go in here, color that. Got ourselves a nice little window now. Okay. And right along the edge, to give this a little separation. Okay. Again, it's just pyro and phthalo. Okay. Now, we need to start thinking about some other big shapes here, like this right here. That comes to the point where we're really thinking about, you know, all the finishing touches and everything. Maybe not all of them, but we're thinking about a lot of them. Because a lot of them are starting to happen right now. Okay. Let's just add a little line on that. And a little line on this. Okay. Smarten up the values on those. Okay. There she goes. Starting to see a little bit more character in this thing. Maybe there's some shadows here and there in the store. Just like that. And get a little bit more right here. Yeah, we're starting to see more and more stuff, aren't we? Yeah, we are. Maybe this is kind of just a little thing that's draping some shadow down on it. Alright? Yeah, maybe it is. Maybe it is. Okay. Let's get this little lock right here. Maybe this doorknob. Okay. And right about in here, there's going to be, I think, a little something right here. There. Okay. Oh goodness. Oh goodness. Sometimes this painting really does a number on you. Okay. We got it. We got it. All right. Here we go. Now, let's take some phthalo blue here. And we want a little bit more phthalo blue. We want a nice balance between the phthalo blue and the pyrrole. But the pyrrole should just tame it down to a shadowy violet color. So there's going to be about just barely more phthalo than pyrrole here. Yeah, that's the right color right there. All right, good deal. So let me go ahead and touch that and feel it. And, yeah, everything's okay. We're good. We're good. We don't need to worry about nothing. Okay. All right. Let's take some of this color. Go right in here. There it goes. Again, we're using the phthalo because we want to keep this color non-granulating. We don't want any texture on it. No, texture is not really the name of the game here. In fact, we can go ahead and glaze this right over this color right here. And we can glaze it right over this shadowy violet color. Okay. There. And we're going to start picking out some places in here where I think we're going to use this. In fact, let's go with the staircase. Ooh, staircase is still a little wet, so maybe not. Oh, yeah. Sometimes my painting surprises me. Okay. So now we'll go right here. All right. Go right here. And I'll take this shadowy violet color. I'll just kind of let it do its thing. Let it do its thing. Right up in here, I think I'll... There. Now, one of the things you want to do is, on the light side of things, you want to make sure there's a little bit of darkness on there. Because, well, it really helps the painting stand out when things are really illuminated like that, okay? Now notice, after we just insert a few things already, how all this is starting to stand out more. All these lit areas. We don't necessarily have to do wet and wet on everything. We don't have to do it on absolutely everything. In fact, we can go ahead now and maybe tame that down a little bit, and then, well, if we want to, I guess we could go ahead and do it right here. Why not? We'll do it right in there too. A little bit of that shadowy violet color with the pyrrole. Just imagine going up here and just looking underneath this thing and seeing all these shadowy colors and thinking to yourself, wow, those look interesting. Yeah, I don't think I've ever done that either. Okay. Right in here. We're going to go right up to these edges where we think that we're going to see maybe a little bit more of some of these colors. Okay? So right about here is where I'm going to go. For this one, we'll go right up to the edge. And maybe I'll... There. Maybe I'll go over here too. And decide. Let's see. Okay. Made some big decisions right there. Made some pretty big ones. And we'll go right ahead right here and get that color. Oops. That one is still pretty wet, isn't it? I thought it would be drier than that. Well, you know, what do I know? Okay. Well, let's go ahead then and look up here. Look up here because we got this color. It's coming. It's going to go right across. All right. Yeah, it kind of just gets in there, doesn't it? There. Here, we'll bring this down a little bit. Okay. That's good. That's good. That doesn't look too bad at all. Very nice, very nice. Well, all we gotta do is wrap up a few things up in here. I say that. And then we can look at the staircase here. The staircase probably needs a little bit of this shadowy violet color. Okay, we can leave. Now hopefully you can still see your pencil lines. Viral, sometimes if you apply it real thickly it can be a little opaque, but generally it's pretty transparent. It's a pretty transparent color. So you should be able to see some of your pencil lines, but you know, after applying so many layers of color again and again and again, you might have a little trouble seeing things like that. Okay. But hopefully you'll still be able to see them and you'll still be able to put down these final details in the stairs. We could do more stuff to them, but you know, we're just fussing with it a bunch. Nothing worse than fussing with your painting a little too much. I always like to say that, you know, it takes a couple of people to paint a painting. One to actually paint the picture, and the other to grab his hand and tell him to stop. And then maybe another one to laugh at him and tell him he ruined his picture. Here, let's get this right there. Alright. Okay, that's good. Alright, is this dry yet? It's dry enough, I think. I might live to regret those words. But anyway, let's go ahead with our flat brush. Get in here. And we'll take some of this shadowy violet. And we'll try. Well, this is what we get for, because it wasn't dry quite yet. Man, is this ever going to dry? It's supposed to be 300-pound paper. Really needs to get a move on. Goodness gracious. Alright. You can tell already that we need to take some drastic measures here. Okay. Alright. doing is we're using dry color. We're not putting wet and wet or anything like that. We're just using some dry color here because we're about ready to start wrapping this up because we've been at this for a while, you know. And see how it goes. Not bad. If it needs a little more, go ahead and add some more. Pyrrole and phthalo are both staining colors, so this is going to stain really harshly. It's not really going to go anywhere. Okay? Now we're probably taking a few liberties with the way that things actually look here. But, you know, we're entitled to take some artistic liberty. Okay. Looking good, my friends. Looking good. Ooh. I think there's a little something we might be missing there. Let's go ahead and put a little bit of something right down here. Okay. Looking good, looking good. Alright, maybe just a little something down here too. Okay. Perfect. Okay. We're getting to be close to being done with this. Okay. Just a little bit on the side there. Let's lift a little bit of that. There. That doesn't look too bad. Hey. Alright. Add some color to this side over here. Yeah, we'll do that, make this look more interesting. Because no one's going to be able to see it anyway. Alright. We just wait for that to dry. And we'll go ahead and rinse our brushes now. While we wait. Oops. Got a little bit of hair in our paint. Yeah, that happens sometimes. Okay. I'm just playing around with this because you can do some really wild dark colors with this color, this phthalo blue and this pyrrole. So I'm taking the opportunity to make the staircase really stand out. Just like that. I like making those funny noises. I kind of like doing it. I like doing it. I can't help it. I can't help it. Alright. Do I want to get some more pyrrole here? Let me see what this is going to look like with some pyrrole up in it. Right here. Oh yeah. That's not bad at all. We should have been using concentrated pyrrole all along, huh? Yeah. It's not a bad hue at all. Here. There. Yeah, I like that a little better than that muted yellow-ish color. It's got a little bit more character to it. There. pie roll can really bring the fire when you put it to the task, you know? Here. There it goes. Very nice. You know, you paint a long time and things still surprise you. This is one of those times where, even now, I get surprised by a color I've been using for years and how well it performs when I need it to. Just truly impressive stuff. What a wonderful color. I feel that all the glazes have brought us to this point where we're using it this way. So each of these glazes was important. It's not to say that they weren't. It's just a complete surprise. A little bit. Okay. All right. Put one right at the step right there. Yeah, that looks nice. Okay. That's good. Love it. Maybe right here we'll throw this down. There it goes. There it goes. Okay. All right. Perfect. We'll go in here too. There it goes. Having too much fun. Guilty. And right there. Okay. That's still damp. Boy, this area just doesn't want to dry today. This area just doesn't want to dry. Feels like it's still really, really wet. Okay. Alright. Let's put some of that color right up in here. And a little bit right there. Okay. And we can take those down a notch so that we know that there's some separation in the glass panes up there, but not so much that we lose a sense of that non-linear portion. Okay. Let's just add a little bit right along here. There. Like I say, that pyrrole and that phthalo, they're a godsend. They really are. Okay. Let's see. Let's go ahead here. That feels dry to the touch, so let's go ahead with our teal blue and the pyrrole. Get that shadowy violet. And right here. Okay, there it is. Hold on. Hold on. Let's reach in to our liner brush, pull out that pyrrole, and throw a little bit of it right in here. Okay. Now we got ourselves a nice little dark color there, huh? A lot of variation in that one. Cool. Alright, things are starting to feel a little bit more manageable, I hope. Let's start at the bottom here. Let's start with the pyrrole right down here. Okay. That's perfectly fine. And we'll take a little bit off the edges down here. All right. And that little space is complete. Let's feel this one right here. That one feels like it's a little underwhelmed. So let's go in here. All right. And we'll take some more of our pyrrole color and drop it in right at the top. Right at the top. Then we'll continue it like right over here a little bit. There it goes. There it goes. See, that's looking neat. Boy, that looks nice. Alright, things are drying a little bit. Things are definitely picking up now. I got a good feeling about this. Got a good feeling. Okay. Let me just get all this wet. And we'll stop right at the line right there. Luckily, we can still see our pencil line a little bit. So that's a good idea to use pencil on this so you can still see your lines. Otherwise, you might lose them. And then, boy, you're going to be in a little bit of trouble. Okay. Let's stop right about there. And then we'll take our pyrrole again. We'll use a pretty full strength here. Okay? Really full strength. And we'll just kind of wiggle it across what we're doing. Again, full strength. Full strength. Take it into the dark color and just let it mingle a little bit. There it goes. Alright, then we'll take over here. Same thing. Same thing. Okay? Just like that. Just like that. Alright. Alright. Now. We'll dab at that a little bit. Dab at this. Okay. That looks pretty decent. Let's take some of this color here. Okay. Just that pyrrole. You drag it across. Alright. Same as you did over there. Okay. Look at this. We're getting close to being pretty well. We're getting close to being pretty well done with this, aren't we? Yeah, a little bit. A little bit. Everything's going pretty well here. Well, let's take more of our dark color here. And we'll start right about in here. Stop at the line again. Go all the way to the staircase. Okay. Alright. Alright, that's good. That's good. Now, get the pyro color. Get the pyro color and just throw it right in there. Do its thing with that dark color. Alright. Alright. Okay. Alright. And maybe over in here we'll refine a few things. Maybe right there. And maybe right here. Here. Yeah, let's get a little bit more pyro on that. Okay. Let's dab this over here because we're letting it sit a little too much. There. Okay. Yeah, let's just get one more. Ooh, do we want to get one more? Okay. That's good. Alright, I think we've about got ourselves a finished painting here. So let's go ahead and wrap things up here. And let's find a place to put our signature. You know what we do? We go ahead and we take our red. Because we got a thick red that we really only use for signing signatures. And let's go ahead and, well, since we got a lot of stuff going on over there, we can just put it on this side. Make it real small. S. K. And those initials are done. That means the painting's finished. And with that, I think it's time that I have to leave you. I really hope you enjoyed this. I hope you give it a try for yourself because it's a fun exercise in using only one blue instead of two blues because, you know, we have a granulating blue and a non-granulating blue. So this is a nice exercise in creating a painting using only one of those blues to make all your textures. And naturally, we have a lot of different smooth textures in here. There's also a lot of wet and wet work, so it's really good exercises for all that stuff. Anyway, I'll be back next time. Until then, with love from me to you, I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.